integrating unprecedented opportunities and challenges in this wake. The universities as well as the research institutions have to anticipate and address the consequences of the fourth industrial revolution, and also environmental pressures, rising levels of inequality, virtualization of business models, the explosive growth of online communications, increasing intercultural contacts and migration. The world is no longer limited to the national boundaries. Maintaining international competence has become a challenge for each nation to meet. One of the biggest shifts in the world today is the transformation to a knowledge-based society dependent on a workforce equipped with finely tuned international communications and innovative thinking skills. New ideas, knowledge, creativity, courage, and determination are the weapon to fight the challenges. I sincerely hope that this conference, building on the experiences and supported by the teamwork in the various countries, will provide an opportunity to continue moving toward a global solution and taking the required initiative. At this junction, I would like to take the opportunity to thank you to all the members of Organizing Committee and International Scientific Committee for their hard work in planning and coordinating this event. In closing, I encourage all of you to participate actively in the interesting discussion over the next days. I wish everyone a successful and fruitful conference, and also I wish all the participants an enjoyable stay in Žilina Rajské Teplice. And now I would like to invite to the floor the head of the Department of Economics of the Faculty of Operation and Economics of Transport and Communication, University of Žilina, Professor Tomáš Krieštík. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, researchers, it's my great pleasure to welcome you on our International Scientific Conference, Globalization, its Socio-Economic Consequences, which has been running for the last 17 years. These years, we have received more than 600 articles. In the end, we accepted approximately 400 articles from various fields of economics, socio, and behavioral sciences. Totally, our participants came from 18 countries and more than 60 universities or research organizations. During following days, you will have a chance to hear presentation of nearly 200 colleagues. I am delighted that each year we welcome and cooperate with more and more people, which make this conference one of the most significant in the Central and Eastern Europe. I wish you successful presentation of your article or research. I wish you lots of inspiration and great conversation with your colleagues. At the end, let me introduce our keynote speaker and chairman, Mr. Mariusz Ričovský.
Dear magnificent Čorejová, ladies and gentlemen, it's actually a great pleasure. Some of you were here last year, so you saw me, and maybe the speech last year was so fancy that Professor Krieštík has decided that I have to bring a little bit fresh air in a very serious economic discussion. So I was trying to prepare some remarks, some ideas, some changes which we see in the development of the globalization of the global economy, investment, and so on and so on. Since the last conference in Rajecke Teplice, but despite of the new development, there are some truths which are remaining and which were not solved in the last year. So the issue is that really the expected positive consequences of globalization are not as good as the economists and the politicians have expected, and still there is a chance if that the globalization can really bring better world, especially for the poor countries and poor people, if we are able to solve the problems which are ahead of us. So maybe the crucial issue is that we had the globalization which had never the global governance. So the globalization was actually a little bit wild and very honestly driven by large international corporation, in some extent supported by the politicians if you look at the regional economic and free trade zones and cooperation areas. But if we really want to have the good coming from the globalization, there should be something what should be a new world order which will be able to cope with the effects of globalization. One of the key points which are actually coming in the discussion about globalization is the unequal division of the wealth in the world. If you look at the discussion and the forecast, then we can see that the concentration of wealth in the hands of few people and few countries is still increasing. If you look historically at the difference between the richest and poorest countries, this figure is not decreasing, it's increasing. 500 years ago, the difference between the richest and poorest countries was 1 to 5. Recently, it's 1 to 500. So the differences are not increasing, and if we believe Barack Obama, such situation can bring serious instability in the global economy. So the question is, and that's something what maybe we'll discuss in next 2 days, what we can do, how we can fix the imbalances, how we can improve the whole process of globalization, how we can improve the governance of the process of globalization, in the sense that we will avoid the negative consequences, and we can support the positive consequences of globalization. Maybe you've read the speech of Joe Biden at the last World Economic Forum in Davos, where part of his speech was also related to the rift between the let's say rich, fast progressing countries with increasing high-tech and technological advantages, and the poor countries which are trying to solve very basic problems of their population. This is something what we already discussed last year, and that is trust in our political leaders, institutions, which I assume, if you look at the situation last year and this year, actually didn't increase. I would say it's even decreased. Put me down. Okay, so we know all the driving forces of globalization, which are quite clear. I don't wanna repeat it because you know it. Poďme ďalej. Ešte ďalej. So what happened since the last conference is that we had the U.S. elections, and we can see very significant change in the U.S. policy, also concerning the globalization, concerning the approach to Trans-Pacific Partnership, Transatlantic Partnership, also NAFTA. Also the lower growth of the world trade. We have seen, or we were facing some decrease of the Chinese economic growth, problems related to new technological development, cybersecurity, which especially since the last cyber attacks are considered as a serious thing. I had the experience with the attack, so the global corporation was attacked, and it took almost 3 weeks to clean the IT systems and to bring the corporation back to life, which is very significant, and that's something where we could have big problems if for example the cyber attacks are coming to the vital technologies like electricity distribution networks, water distribution networks, and so on, where we cannot survive if they are switched off for 3 weeks. Of course, we are still facing the continual challenge of migration, especially in Europe. The process of Brexit, which we are observing every day, is also a very serious issue. The new topic is Catalonia, where probably the political approach was not the best one. Of course, we have still the crisis, and I would say the U.S.-Russian relationships are on the historical lowest level. And I don't want to comment the John Biden remark. It's up to you how you consider it. So if we are briefly coming to the end, the point is that still the gap between the rich and poor, and this is between the countries, between the nations, and even between the people within the countries, is increasing, and that's something what if we try to keep the order, the national order, the political order stable, and that's something what we have to solve, because it's really, from my point of view, element of instability in the economy, in the world. Political tensions, you can see them every day in the newspapers, so I don't want to comment them. Also the ambition to reach sovereignty. The significant issue is, and I don't want to talk about the climate changes as a environmental issue, but the climate change is also economic issue, because they are really part of the reason of migration is also related to climate changes, not just to political or military unrest. And of course, we are living, or we are used to live in debt of financial debt, environmental debt. Actually, we are pushing burden of debt in ahead of us, and I see actually no big effort to solve this problem. Demography is also a topic, and the changes in the labor market is topic which we have discussed also last year at this conference. Military spending are reaching historic heights, and of course the economic and ecological migrations are major global problem which are affecting also the openness of the economy. It has impact, for example, in Europe on the Schengen system and so on and so on. So this is still a problem which has impact on globalization. Yeah. So those are just few remarks, maybe for refreshment. We will discuss in next 2 days most of these topics like global competitiveness, corporate management, organization, global energy markets, labor market, education, demographic. They are articles covering these issues, technological progress, artificial intelligence, globalization, these contents. So I hope that after these 2 days we will have a lot of new information. We will have better social networking, because also the social networking is very important issue by solution of the global problems. And I hope we will have a bit of fun today evening. So I wish you very nice 2 days, and it's a pleasure to see you again. And I would like to thank also for the honor to announce the next speaker. The next speaker is, if I read it wrongly, please excuse me, Professor Vevere Vegla from the University College of Economics and Culture in Riga, Latvia, with a speech covering reporting university social responsibility and university global competitiveness.
Is like our thought or our statement is what we wanted to prove and what we wanted to check is that one of the ways how we can raise our competitiveness is university social responsibility. This is one. And the second is that even if we are social responsible, people need to know, because if prospective students, and if this actually comes to the aim of the study, even if we are good doers, doing good, and nobody knows that we are not competitive. And so we have to put forward our good deeds to attract students, to attract better staff, better teachers, to attract investments, and so on and so forth. Going back here, I wanted to say that the problem is that universities employ the tactics and strategy of social responsibility, but at the same time, we really believe that there is a lack of some offline and online, but basically, since we live in the global village, as we all know, so it is important to do this corporate social responsibility also online, in order students and prospective students and staff and so on, they would be able to see who we are, what we do, and could be interested in our university. And of course, it goes also together with the concepts of the good governance. It goes together with the concept of being like green university and being attractive in many respects. So this is actually the starting point of our investigation. And when looking into home pages and published materials of different universities, and we chose 5 universities in Latvia, regardless their size and orientation, but a little bit later about this, we came to the conclusion that none of these universities have a corporate social responsibility report published. So what we tried to do, we dwelled on their annual reports, and we tried to find what aspects of university social responsibility are being included in their reports. And finally, as an outcome, there would be a proposal that the university and or the special programs of the university, they have to devise a special platform or site and publish separately these issues. You will see from the results that universities are not thinking in this direction, at least in Latvia. It could be interesting afterwards to do also some comparative research. So the aim of the study is to study these biannual reports. This is why I said, because first, annual reports are primary tools in analyzing social performance, and it is public, and it is published on a regular basis. This is one. And the second is, there's simply non-existent corporate social responsibility reports by the universities, at least in Latvia. Of course, I think if we go wider and look into these big and world-famous universities, maybe they have like Harvard University, California, like all these Penn University and all universities. So the research method, what we did the qualitative content analysis, deductive analysis. Why deductive? Because getting ready for this, I already made some previous research, and I prepared methodological basis, and I published, I published an article on the social indicators of the university responsibility. So we put forward, is it working? Okay, I think it's, it's TV, it's eating up. So the promotion of well-being, I will explain a little bit later what does it include. Then promotion of know-how, promotion of ownership of staff and students, and community involvement. These are 1, 2, 3, 4, the social indicators. So what we set up to do, we set up to look for these different parameters or indicators using the computer program, and like putting in not specific phrases exactly, but at least the fields, and we tried to see what areas are being researched and how often these aspects are being mentioned in the annual reports. The sampling, what we did not compare the annual reports of the universities, but to make this sample more clear and more valid, we compared the programs or directions of business administration. It means that we took out of these reports, now, like there are reports by the universities and there are reports by the different faculties or different programs or different directions. So what we did, we actually took these five programs, because then regardless if the university is public or private, regardless the number of students, we have at least the more or less similar starting material that can be analyzed by the method of content analysis. And what we did, we looked into the report from the previous year, 2015, 2016. We can't look into this year's report, obviously. Hopefully, with our effort, the reports will be better. Let's see how it goes. So, the sampling, and I'm not mentioning the universities, but you see there are like 1, 2, 3, 4 private universities and 1 public university. And the number of students, the number of students is quite different, but it does not affect the annual reports. And what, of course, the activities can differ from the size, and of course the limitation of the research is that sometimes activities also differ in regard the university being private or the public university, because they have different responsibilities. But therefore, so we will go according to these indicators. So the theoretical framework, what was used for getting ready for this research, first is literature on the university social responsibility. And I would like to mention especially one conception that was the background of all this research. It is Puka's conception of triple bottom line of sustainability in higher education. So basically what we talk about sustainability, we have these 3 elements, and one of these elements is social element. And he actually pinpointed some of the aspects that should be stressed. Then literature on competitiveness of higher education. And here we were looking into global rankings of the universities and the problems related with these rankings of the universities. Because what we know, what is the role of the ranking? On one hand, the ranking shows the real situation. On the other hand, it affects the situation, because if you read rankings, of course the students are affected, interested or disinterested, encouraged or discouraged. And the literature on reporting university social responsibility, and here I would like to mention just one document, Global Reporting Initiative, that comes together also with global governance, all this good governance program. So here I'm not going to dwell on the theoretical aspects. Just one quotation that from Reiser. What basically is this university social responsibility? And what we see, it is a policy of ethical quality of performance and of the university community, students, faculty, and administrative employees, by responsible management of educational, cognitive, labor, and environmental impacts produced by the university in an interactive dialogue with society to promote a sustainable human development. So basically, as you see, we dwell on the concept of sustainability and competitiveness, yeah, all together. So what are, according to the theory, what are the desired outcomes of the university social responsibility? Community of learners and scholars, graduates who have well-balanced knowledge, and good governance and common good practice. So now I would mention just in a few words, because afterwards we're going into a few slides with numbers, but to decipher what we meant under these 4 indicators of university social responsibility. So promotion of well-being. This is living and working conditions. Hostels, working stations, students' working stations. Then rewarding performance, rewarding research. That's also important because in the knowledge society we're more and more talking about the research universities. And if we do not reward the research, so we are falling back, at least talking about this indicator. So then, according to the students, one-stop agencies for different assistance, health, financial assistance, scholarships, grants, and etc. So the second is promotion of ownership of staff and students. This is also like more active participation, and then the possibilities, for example, for online registration for courses, applying professors and teaching staff applying for leave, training, different entrepreneurship projects, and business incubators also, or business hubs. In most of the universities I was looking at, of course, we have these business incubators, and today we know how important is this organization for developing of future business-minded people, because they can start their businesses there. Oh, okay, so something disappeared. Then know-how. This is collaboration with industry partners and collaboration also with universities, excellence centers, training centers, and of course I would add here also the internationalization of the university. And as we would see later on, this aspect of internationalization is not really mentioned apart from the student and staff mobility in the reports. And so community involvement, it means different charity events, lifelong education, different courses offered to citizens, then consultation centers. Sorry, it disappeared even more. Okay, I can talk from here. I can talk from here, but you can't see. But that's actually important because the next slide is important. So, I can't.
That's the blackout animation.
Like, remember, if you remember me last year when I was presenting, the poster dropped. So it was obviously it's my energy. I don't know, what can we do? Because I need numbers, because the next slide is, as you see, now you can see university, A, B, and C. So, okay, let me, let me explain the next. I'm not going to recite numbers. I can sing numbers, but it doesn't make any difference. But okay, there are three in this table. There are 3 columns. Like the first is the university A, B, and C. I really didn't want to mention these universities because this is not of an importance. Yeah? So we see the tendency here. The next is the coverage in percentage. It means how much. You can't see. I'm not talking numbers at this moment. Yeah, but I'm telling what you gonna see. Hopefully. Then, what is in percentage the coverage of this particular topic, and you will see that the coverage is really small, and the number of references. So, no. Okay, so then there are numbers. There are numbers. There are numbers like related to all these four social indicators of university social responsibility. And later you will see that the percentage of each social indicator, it does not exceed like it's 264 or something percent. Okay, if we talk about like the annual report, that's a lot of paper. But at the same time, these small numbers and their references, I think the maximum of the references, it was 19. It means that these number of references, it shows that it does not, the attention is not being paid enough, yeah? So, okay, it switches. Because there are like 4 slides with numbers, and these numbers are only of consultative, like, and you will see how there is not much attention being paid to these aspects. So okay, I can go to conclusions, and if it switches on, so the numbers you will see in my article. So believe me, like the highest number of references in the annual report. An annual report, it's, I don't know, like 50, 60, and many pages. So the main conclusions are, so can you go to conclusions at least to look last before slide? Okay, conclusions. Okay, so the most stressed aspect, yeah, even when talking in numbers, is the most stressed aspect is well-being. Basically, university social these programs or faculty social responsibility reports, they actually stress more what? Living conditions, technical basis, new computers, internet, and all of this. And this is good, of course, because the better living and working conditions for students and for teachers, the better the work. And this is one of the aspects of corporate social responsibility, as we know, for sustainability. But at the same time, we can say that if we look into these reports of particular programs, they are not being designed as reports for the programs. They refer to the university. So what we see a gap between the, like it means that there are no specific tasks, yeah, specific questions to be pondered regarding this. Then the least stressed aspect is a promotion of know-how. And it's kind of interesting. Why? It's interesting because it should be much higher because of the knowledge society and because of the research university. And the point here is that the aspect of internationalization was not taken into account almost at all, only student and staff mobility. It's Erasmus, Erasmus Mundus, and other different programs. But if we think about the internationalization of education, and if we think about like global processes and globalization, the internationalization is really important aspect. And as you see, that's the last overall, yeah, as you see, internationalization. And that's save for, it's not mentioned, save for except of the student and staff mobility. And the main conclusion after this, and it comes also for maybe our next research and the next project, is that there are no, at least in Latvia, among these universities, there are no university social responsibility platforms available. So even if they have many words in papers and something, but let's see, imagine we are prospective students or professors or academicians. So at least I demonstrate some numbers. So I'm not going to dwell into numbers, just to demonstrate that I'm not lying. The idea is that they don't have these platforms. For example, I'm switching on the homepage. I'm looking for the university. I can find a lot of information on academicians, on the faculty, on the research and something. But this aspect that is, in my opinion, one of the key aspects in university competitiveness internationally and locally and nationally and internationally, this is not mentioned at all. So the next step, this actually is, like the first research was to work out indicators, the next is to do the research, and the third is we're going to work on the platform, and maybe some guidelines how to report according to Global Reporting Initiative, how to report the social responsibility. If we go back, here are just numbers. Yeah? For example, you see the coverage. Okay, here is like one university, promotion of well-being in 338, yeah, and 493. This is actually the most stressed, and the references in the whole annual report, as you see, as high as 19 and as low as 2. Here, what we see the same. Here we see the same, and ownership of staff and students. It means, what is the ownership of staff and students? It's a kind of belonging of students to the university. Then promotion of know-how, and you see in one university, 0. In one of the universities, 0 zeros. And I'm sure, because I know these universities are doing this, but if you are doing and if you're not telling, okay, it's good for existing students, but it's not good for attracting. And community involvement here, as you see also, the last university is one, and then and the last one is a public university and a good university. It means that they have good results, but nobody knows about these results. So then the next step is to create this platform as kind of guidelines. Everybody can more or less can use, like, no, I don't want to say template. Yeah, it sounds too technical. Yeah, but I think it's kind of guidelines. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Vevere. It was very interesting, and actually it was very nice that you have really opened the conference in the topic of labor force development and demography. And and what is actually great is that that really also the universities are in the global world part of the competitiveness and competition, and actually as you say, you have to be cheapest, best, first, or different. And actually the advantages of universities in a lot of cases, and to increase the competitiveness, is also to show the difference to another universities which are competing in the same market and for the same students. So, but I would like to come to the next distinguished speaker, which is Magnificence Marek Vochoska from the Institute of Technology and Business in České Budějovice, and his speech, Production Cost Modeling via Artificial Intelligence. The floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As it was said, my name is Marek Vochoska. I am from Institute of Technology and Business in České Budějovice, that means from the Czech Republic. I heard a joke from the audience that the blackout was made by Mr. Hryčovský because he wanted to fulfill the time schedule. So I promised to make it in time that I got. Sorry for the joke. Firstly, I would like to say that I am interested in corporate finance, and I prepared 2 contributions for this conference. One is about production cost modeling via artificial intelligence, and second one is focused on analysis on manufacturing industry in the Czech Republic with the help of coherent neural networks. I must say that I like very much the artificial neural networks because they are very, very similar to the way of human thinking. That means very, very efficient on one side, but with some mistakes on the other side. So I am honored that I can introduce the results of my work. Firstly, I would like to talk about the challenges of new economics, of the global world that we are in. So, but from the point of view of the corporates and companies. Firstly, I would like to say that the business environment is very dynamic and very complicated. Let's say more complicated than in the past. Dynamic, that means that we are going through changes day by day. Then I would like to say that more frequent and more complicated decision process was established. That means that we have a lot of information that we should process. We have a lot of information for our decision making. And of course, we should take it into account when we make the decision. The third aspect of new economics is, of course, time pressure. That means that the cycles of innovations is shorter and shorter. And I think that a good example is automotive industry. What is very important for this presentation is that the role of computing and communication technology grew up. So, sorry. Yeah. Of course, I can talk about global world more and more minutes, maybe more and more hours. But I would like to show a few sources that I used for my presentation and introduce some colleagues that were interested in new challenges of new economics. Especially, I can recommend Professor Kislingerova from University of Economics in Prague. I can recommend, of course, other colleagues, but I see that few of them are sitting among us. Generally, I would say that the main target, main objective of modern companies is growing or increasing of shareholder value. We measure it with the help of free cash flow to the equity and economic value added in the way of equity. Free cash flow to the equity means that we can take out the cash flow from the company with no damage. That means that the company lives and can work. Economic value added is also very important because it takes into account the risk that is not only in the market but also in, let's say, a legal environment, business environment, and so on. And we can say that on one side are generators of value, and on the other side are costs. And generally, we can manage both groups that can influence the result, that means free cash flow to the equity or economic value added equity. But this contribution focuses on costs. So let's say production costs, because Production is the main process of the company. It means that the company turns inputs into outputs, and this is the core of its existence. The aim of the contribution that I put is the development of an instrument for modeling production costs with the help of artificial intelligence. Generally, brief introduction of the theoretical approach. You see that there are production factors described by economists Kislingerova and Fehe. That means managerial work, handwork, or dispositive work, we can say, fixed assets and material. On the other hand, on the other side of the slide, there is data that I took into account and that I used for the analysis. That means that labor costs, social security and health insurance and services describe managerial work and handwork costs. I would like to say that cost means the value of production factors expressed in the form of money or cash, I can say. Then fixed assets are described by annual depreciations and interest, and material, of course, by consumption of energy and material. The data that I used are not virtual. They come from a real company that is called Cable SRO, and the data are from the years 2006 till 2015. Of course, the work is not only about the results, but also about the methods and methodology. Generally, I used software that was issued by Dell company. It's Statistica version 12.2. I used instrument that is called data mining, and I used automatic neural networks. That's the first round of the analysis, and of course you can change it by customized neural networks analysis. And of course I use time series. Generally, it's very necessary to divide the data set into 3 groups, because we can create the model, we can create the instrument, but we should say if it is valid or not. So the first group of data has 70% of the data set, the second one testing for validation, and third one for the final validation have each 50% of the data set. I used for the analysis 2 kinds of neural networks. I used multi-layer perceptron networks and neural networks of radial basic function. The first one is very widespread, and I can say that it's the first form of the neural networks that were used in computing. There is also information about the activation functions. I used identity logistic function, hyperbolic tangents, exponential function, and sinus for the neurons in hidden layer, and for the neurons of output layer. Generally, the task was to create at least 1,000 neural networks, and I saved the 5 most, or five best, I can say. this table represents the results of the analysis. That means that I saved 10 best neural networks. All of them are of radial basis function type, and I used some quartile as error function, and all of them use the activation function in hidden layer Gauss curve and output activation function identity. Generally, is very important the column with training performance, testing performance, and validation performance. We are looking for neural structures with very high performance. We prefer very close to 1, but you see that none of 1 has 1. But we also want the performance in all groups of the data set equal. And you see that the first one, let's say, offer the result that can be used. Of course, the first thing is that you see the numbers. The numbers can be very attractive. The neural networks can seem to be applicable in practice. But of course, we are economists, we are not mathematicians, and we should know how to use them in practice. So that's why we prefer to save at least 5, maybe 10, maybe more structures, because we should rely on our expertness to say how the results can be interpreted. So there are some descriptions of the results. You see minimum and maximum of each prediction of each neural networks and of each production cost. And of course, you see the last row inputs that are real and that were used for the analysis. Generally, we are looking for neural networks that has its predictions near to the reality, of course, but I say that 100% prediction is impossible, but we also can make, and you can read it in my paper, the analysis of residuals. And of course, we are looking for structures that have no residuals. There is a graphic that performs the process of material and energy cost. Maybe it was not a joke, it was really truth that
Magnificence.
That information.
Magnificence, because I am defending.
Yeah. Thank you for it.
I am fanatically defending freedom of speech. I would never switch off anyone. So
no problem. I wanted only to display the graphic way of the comparison of the predictions and of the real data curve. You see the output is blue or dark blue, and the networks are displayed in other colors. And you see that nearly neural networks of the first alteration is very close to the reality. So I can say and make the conclusion that artificial neural networks can be used practically for prediction of the development of the costs of company. That's very important for making balances, revenue and cost statements, and at all the financial plans of companies. You see that RBF, that means radio basis function, neural networks, 1, 8, 6, that means the number 1 is applicable. 1 means one neuron, one input that was used, that means time. 8 means the hidden layer, and 6 means the 6 outputs, 6 costs representing production factors. So, I think that the presentation was about the potential of artificial neural networks. I used neural networks that we call with teacher. The second contribution that I prepared for this conference is about Kohonen or application of Kohonen neural networks. And these networks are called neural networks without teacher. It's different work, but the advantages and disadvantages of this kind of neural networks are, let's say, very similar. And these days I am working on another paper, and it's focused in value generators that I mentioned during my presentation and were displayed on one slide of the presentation I made. I hope that it was only a brief introduction of my topic, of my major, and I hope that there will be time for discussion of the results, discussion of the potential of the neural networks, and maybe about cooperation, as it was said that networking is the most important conclusion or result of this conference. So, thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to discuss it with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your speech. Actually, today in the morning I saw in ČT24, which is a Czech news channel, discussion concerning the competitiveness of Czech Republic. So I assume the part of the success of Czech Republic is also thanks to the good work of the University of Marek Vochoska. So the next speech is coming from Professor Olga Molchanova and Professor Valentina Gerasimenko. The topic is customization of business education in condition of global learning space, Russian experience. If you let me tell a few words, actually a lot of you maybe saw the forecast of the global economic development made by PricewaterhouseCoopers until 2050, whatever. And what was for me surprising was that the position of the Russian economy in this forecast was very stable. Actually, Russia was able to keep, based on the purchasing power relation, keep sixth place in the world, which, what I assume, expects a lot of effort within the Russian economy So I'm really wondering about, I was eager to hear all the information which we can get, because that's not that much recently. So I'm looking forward to your speech. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Marius. Dear colleagues, good morning, or according to our time, good afternoon. And let me start with real thankful words to the organizers of this conference for very wonderful and friendly atmosphere and warm atmosphere, warm in all meanings, warm relations, warm water, and even name of the city is very warm, Teplica. Thank you very much. And we, with my colleague Valentina Gerasimenko, would like to present some results of our research on the theme customization of business education in conditions of global learning space, paying special attention to Russian experience. Let me say a few words about the organizations that we represent and on basis of which we conducted our research. It is Moscow, Lomonosov Moscow State University. For everyone who visited Moscow, this building is well known. Lomonosov Moscow State University is the oldest, and we are proud that the leading university according to most rankings, leading university in Russia. It is world famous for its scientific and educational achievements. Faculty of Economics at Lomonosov Moscow State University celebrated its 75th anniversary last year.
Dear professor, we are improving in switching off and on the screen, so
yeah,
you can see we are now very flexible, so we can switch and switch off and on very fast.
Before. Thank you. And according, I hope these data are quite indicative to show the role of our Faculty of Economics in the development of economic theory and management practice in Russia. Next, please. In the study, it doesn't work. It doesn't. Okay, thank you. In our study, study of globalization effects on the development of further business education, we were looking for answer to two basic questions. Does the globalization lead to convergence of approaches to business education and to unification of programs' content? If so, do business schools consider it as a problem? And the second question was what features are crucial for consumers' choice of education, business education programs. Many experts noticed that last 50 years saw quite significant convergence of national business education systems. And we think that, and we agree with experts, that highlight two main factors of this tendency. First, it's international accreditation systems, or more correctly, the school's intention to be accredited. Because by such famous agencies like AACSB, it's American Association, EFMD, AMBA, and some other accreditation agencies. And the second factor, in our opinion, and we agree with those experts that think that influence of American model of business education as well promote the convergence of national business education system. Accreditation is a way to differentiate from the competitors, as it allows school to stand up to stand out on the national and international levels. However, the market is homogenizing as more and more schools receive accreditation. And accreditation based on similar standards and best practices, up to the point when there is practically no differences, or accreditation doesn't give a distinctive identity. So the intention to receive accreditation inevitably leads to competitive mimicry, which in its turn leads to national business education system is losing its unique features. As a result, business schools are becoming more and more alike, and institutional isomorphism occurs. We can see that these approaches develop in a circular fashion. Convergence of business schools became a stimulus for further divergence, to follow more heterogenic approaches, because copying, as we know, doesn't help to be strategically successful. The school intention to gain competitive advantages forces them to seek and incorporate local, regional, national specific features and traits. That in its turn leads to customization and further personalizations. Thank you. How these trends are manifested in Russia? To answer this question, we conducted expert interviews with top executives of 19 leading Russian business schools, and survey of students and graduates of distance MBA program at Lomonosov Moscow State University in this year. So it allows us to look at this problem from two sides. From the side of demand on business education problem, and from supply side. Top executives of leading Russian business schools were asked to estimate a share of invited specialists in their programs and forecast this year in 2020 to assess the level of customization of educational content in regard to the practical specifics and aspects of Russian business. Almost all business schools invite about half of their teachers from business. And in practically more than 30% of the cases, the executives expect the share of invited specialists to grow over time. Among other important customization indicators of Russian business education could be mentioned that most of schools expect the share of shorter and cheaper programs in their portfolio will grow. And as to level to participation of students in the designing and drafting the curricula, only one of 19 executives responded that students don't participate in this process. And about half of business school plan to significantly increase the student participation in designing curricula by 2020. One of the ways personalized education is, as we all know, is to develop online learning, because this makes it possible for schools to be more flexible about students' preferences regarding time and place of learning. As it evident from these given estimates, by 2020 it is planned significant increase in proportion of online learning. Next, please. Okay, thank you. The second research was aimed at identifying key components of demand on further business education. Further, it continuing, in American it is called continuing, in Russian дополнительное. In Europe, as we know, more familiar word, further business education. The results of this research, of this survey, show that students don't see standardization and customization as mutually exclusive parameters. They believe that standardization, accreditation, and on the one hand, and on the other hand, customization should be combined in the same program of further business education. And how to reach effectively this result, it is a very interesting task for us, and we consider it as a direction for future research. And we are open to collaborate to find effective results for these very important questions. Thank you for your attention, or to be more customized. Спасибо за внимание.
So thank you very much for the speech. What is quite important is that really also the competition and competition between the universities worldwide is becoming even stronger, and of course the standardization that every university has fulfilled something is becoming very evident. But on the other side, the difference between the universities to find something what makes the university unique, increase the competitiveness. So we are coming to our final speaker before the break, but definitely we will not switch you off, I promise. If the technology doesn't do that. Professor Stanislav Svadba from University of Economics in Katowice in Poland, and he will bring his speech about the differences in the level of globalization and changes in the world. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for invitation. Thank you very much for invitation, the organizing committee. Thank you for giving me a possibility to present my not very good, you see, paper on the first plenary session. You know the title of my paper, and the main purpose of it is to present the differentiation between the level of globalization on continents, between countries, and also to show the changes that have taken place in the last decades, approximately 25 years. Shortly speaking, I want to show which countries are more rich, which less globalized, where the changes are higher, where slower. The paper consists of 4 points. Of course, introduction, measuring globalization. The points 3 and 4 are the main points, as you know, as you see, and conclusion. In introduction, I write a little bit about the globalization. I don't want to talk no time about this. Everybody has their own opinion what is globalization. You can read it, you can compare it with your own opinion. It's from COF report about globalization, about COF index of globalization. Soon I explain why I put this definition. And next point, also very shortly, about measuring globalization. Economists, not only economists, are interested in different aspects of globalization and also in measuring globalization. Why? Because if, for example, me in this paper, I want to show the differences between the level of globalization, to show the changes in it, I have to know how to measure it. And on this slide, you can see the list of institutions here who developed their own index of globalization. I will not discuss about them, only about one. It is COF Index of Globalization, and I try to explain why I've chosen this index for my research. It was developed in 2002 by Alex Dreher in Switzerland. You know, the name is from the name of the institute. It's published every year, many countries, etc., etc. So it's the reason I took this one. For me, it's the best. Sorry. Some words about this index. It has 3 dimensions: economic, social, and political dimensions. It means that we have 4 indices: 1 overall global index and 3 sub-indices. Each index has its sub-index. It's own shown. I showed these 3 sub-indices and the variable for these indices: economic globalization with his 36%. Social indices 37, and political globalization 27. You can read about it on the website, COF website. You can find a detailed methodology how the globalization is measured. So let's move to the next point, to the level of globalization. And first, on the first slide, you can see the top 20 of overall index, COF Index of Globalization 2016, it's from the last year. And you can see that Netherlands is the most globalized country, followed by Ireland and Belgium. You can see that European countries are dominated here, mainly small and medium-sized countries. From the so-called Big Four, only 2. This works. So. 2 on the 2 last ranks, France and UK. You can find it's mainly medium and small-sized countries. 18, it's probably 18 countries. 16 of them are EU members. Next, economic globalization. And here, Singapore is the more globalized country, but European countries are also are dominating here. You can also see here some countries belonging to the EU 11. I will talk about it later. I created a group, EU 11. It's a new country, new EU countries, but not all new. Only these who were before socialist countries with central planet economies. Next index, social globalization index. Here, this index is very similar to the overall index. The first 6 countries are the same. They only change the position. And in this index, you can see also France and UK, the big EU countries. And the last one, political globalization, it differs much from the previous indices, and opposite to them, there are mainly big countries, 4 countries, the big 4 European countries, also non-European countries, such as the USA, Canada, Russian Federation, Brazil, Argentina. Yes, and let's have a look at the bottom of the list, and I show you the less globalized countries in overall index and in 3 sub-indices, 3 dimensions: economic, social globalization, political globalization. It's let's say the bottom 15 countries are here, and some are not independent. There are but you can read this. I will not talk more about this. And about EU 11, new countries, former socialist countries. You can see that there are mainly in the top of the rankings. In the general overall index, you can see that the Hungary is 9th, Slovak Republic and Czech Republic are in the top 20. Yeah? Poland not 23rd position. Yeah. The Latvia on 40th place. In economic globalization, you can have even 4 countries in the top 20. In social globalization, a little bit worse. Only Slovak is in Republic is in the first 20, but Czech Republic behind. Slovak Republic, next Lithuania, Hungary, Poland. And in political globalization, we know why these small countries are here. Hungary is 23rd. You can see that usually Hungary is on the top position in this group of countries. So let's move to next point, to the changes in the level of globalization during the period 2013. And on the first slide, I'd like to show the differences between the continents. And you can see that the highest level of globalization is in Europe. Europe is the most globalized, it is and it was the most globalized continent. It was the most globalized in 1990, blue color, yes, and also in 2030. It changed very much from 40 points to 60, about 66. And on the second position now is Asia. Asia is second globalized continent now, but you can see the big jump because in 1990 Asia was on the 5th place and it moved to second place. So big difference. And next, North America on the 3rd place, but was on the 2nd place. The changes were the smaller on this continent. Next, South America also moved 1 place back. The level of globalization is approximately the same, you see, on this continent. And Africa, it's also a big increase in the level of globalization on this continent, but still on the 5th place. And Oceania also increased the level of globalization, but came on the last 2 place. Next slide, presents the changes in the level of globalization in this period in percentage points, blue color, and in percentage, in terms of percentage. And you can see that in percentage points, Europe is still first, but Asia is a little bit lower, yeah, but almost the same. And then you can see that in percentage points, the changes were not very big in North America, bigger in South America, and even into Africa, higher in Africa, like lower in Oceania. It's in percentage points. In terms of percentage, the biggest changes were in Asia. It was about 80%. That's we know this is the reason why moved from the 5th to 2nd place. And this on the in terms of percentage is on the 1st place. Asia, next Europe, and you can see that North America is on the last place. Yeah, and you can also see the big change in Africa, comparing to South America or North America. Oh, here I have details information, so you can read it. Changes in terms of point. Europe first, but Asia, not big difference. Second, yes, and the other continents, the changes are much lower, and in percentage, first Asia over 80%, then Europe, Africa, Oceania, and on the last place, big difference, North America. Now about the changes in the level of globalization in the EU 11. From 1995 till 2016, the years are not the same, but I could receive new statistical data for these countries. What can you see here? Of course, the level of globalization in 1995 and the level in 2016. You can see that in 1995, yes. Oh, where is it? Oh, that doesn't work. Hungary, I think, is the first. Yes, Hungary, the level of globalization in Hungary was the highest in 1995, over 70 points. Then in Czech Republic and, as I remember, in Poland and in Slovak Republic. It was, these countries were most globalized in this group of countries. And in 2016, on the top, you can see the same countries. Hungary, the first, second Czech Republic, Slovak Republic, probably next Poland, and also Estonia is high. But what you can see, that the differences between the lowest and the highest globalized countries are smaller. The differences were bigger in the middle of the 90s than now. The biggest changes were in, as I remember, in Croatia and in Lithuania, over 30 points. Next in Bulgaria, Romania, Slovenia, and the lowest changes were in Hungary, in Czech Republic, Slovak, in Poland, also in Estonia, because in these countries the level was higher in 1995. If we compare this group of countries to the EU 28, to the all countries, we can see that the changes in the level of globalization in this group was much higher than in other countries. It was also high in Malta, in Cyprus, but these two countries are also belong to new European Union. Yes. Next, in Portugal, in Greece, the less developed countries from the old European Union, and the changes in the old Union, in the such countries as Great Britain, Sweden, it was very small, about 2-3%. So what does it mean? That the big changes are in these countries where the level of globalization was low, and the lowest changes in these countries where the level of globalization were high. It means that we have a convergence. That the convergence is not only in the European Union, in the real economic sphere. Yeah, the differences in GDP per capita, for example, are lower. They are also, of course, in the regulation sphere. And as you see, the convergence is also as far as the level of globalization is concerned. It's, of course, thanks to the fact that these EU 11, these countries, yeah, they were in another system, and when they became more open, when they joined European Union, yeah, the level of globalization jumped up to very much in this group of countries. And now conclusions. First, the globalization extended to all countries, obvious, yes. But of course, the level is not identical in all of these countries. The most globalized are the highly developed European countries of medium size. And that's around Belgium, Austria, etc. You saw it on the slides. Yeah. Next conclusion. European countries dominate in all dimensions of globalization, in all. Next, small and medium-sized European countries are more prominent in the ranking of economic globalization and large in political. Next conclusion, countries that are at a lower level of development are less globalized. You show it on the one slide showing the least globalized country. The rise of globalization in the past quarter century has occurred in all, maybe I didn't check it in all countries, but on all continents, I show it. The largest increase took place in Europe, mainly in the new EU member states, former socialist countries. They are now much less open to the world as it was before. Significant growth also occurred in Asian countries, in Asia. And on the other continents, the changes were lower than in Europe and in Asia. Oh, one more slide. Thank you for your attention.
So, dear Professor Swazba, thank you for your presentation. I think it was very significant to explain the process of globalization at the start. And yeah, we hope that the risk in development of globalization will not harm the positive development of the globalization in general, and that the positive results will come also to poorer countries which will become more globalized. So, distinguished guests, we are coming to the break. As you may see, that we've got already training what the failure of technology can make with the globalization. So I hope that it had not influence on the quality of the kitchen in this hotel. So I hope we will have a good lunch, and after the lunch, we are starting to work in working groups, so you have to select the areas based on the program where you will participate. So thank you very much for your attention.